Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw us some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Niall.
Where's Kyle?
Where is he? Oh, shit.
Where's
gone.
Kyle? Is that what we're exploring this week?
Yeah, we're exploring where Kyle is.
Missing Kyle.
Kyle got missing 411. He was too close to a river and footprints.
Those ones are so sad.
Yeah. No.
Sometimes people do just be going missing.
Sometimes people go missing in national parks
They're
near
just real
berries
people,
and rivers.
and they really go missing. Anyway,
Yeah.
good opening.
So-
Strong opening.
Strong opening.
And this is what you can expect when I'm on the pod, baby. This is the energy I bring to the studio.
Yeah. I mean, look,
When you die, do you want to be buried or cremated? I'm coming in hot.
I guess cremated, I think.
I think so too,
yeah.
actually.
I feel like
It's our ego making us take up space in the ground.
yeah, there's a bit of that, I think.
It's ego.
I don't need to have a fucking 6 foot long fucking box, you know? Who cares? Anyway.
You know what my dad used to say? Stick a ham bone up my ass and have the raccoons drag me away.
That's a good one. I don't know
And
if I've
then
heard that
years
one.
later, my mom said, he got that from me. Which, if you know me, is it's exemplary of both my parents.
Yeah, that's kind of the microcosm.
Mm-hmm.
So this week, Kyle is ill, so he's off recovering. So Jules decided to step in, and we use this as an opportunity so for a while, Kyle and I have been trying to figure out how to tackle these kind of mini-series documentaries that come out that are like 4 to 6 episodes, and they're dropped on streaming services, and it's been kind of a popular thing lately to not do a documentary movie, but instead do a miniseries, and that makes Fuck Your Documentary just a little bit harder. So
yeah, they're like, let's take this thing that normally would have been 90 minutes to 2 hours and make it 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's annoying for our Fuck Your Documentary series. So instead, we're doing kind of an altered FYD for these miniseries where we brought in someone who is a little more not inundated with the world of weird at all times. And Jules and I watched the first 2 episodes of the show Encounters, produced by Amblin Television, aka Steven Spielberg's production company, for Netflix. And we're going to kind of go through what these episodes are and look at it from both my perspective as someone who's kind of does the podcast and your perspective from someone who
dates
doesn't.
someone who does the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I think if we made a scale of people, I'm definitely higher on it than some people.
Yes.
Because I also do watch stuff like this recreationally, but I definitely am nowhere near you and Kyle, who do it on a near professional level.
Yeah, but you're on the level of someone who, like, as an interest, turns on History Channel and watches like Ancient Aliens sometimes.
I'll do that, yeah.
So like, there's
I can say really confidently and proudly, I never watched Ancient Aliens.
Fair.
But that kind of thing, yes. This kind of thing, this Amblin thing was extremely up my alley. I would say like 2010 to 2013.
Were you an Unexplained Mysteries kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unsolved Mysteries.
Unsolved Mysteries.
I was a huge Unsolved Mysteries kid. I loved what's the one the Frakes one? It never happened.
Truth
Fact
or
Fiction.
Truth or Fiction. Fact or Fiction or something like that.
I watched that all the time.
Yeah.
The Ripley's Believe It or Not show I
Okay.
liked as well. That like sort of late 90s, early 2000s vibe. When it was in repeats when I was in high school, I used to watch it like that all the time.
I was total like. I watched a little bit of like the History Channel stuff, but I was mostly like Junkyard Wars and like BattleBots and like like weird competition shows.
Yeah. I used to watch a lot of the Unsolved Mysteries type stuff, and also like I guess like what would it have been? Dateline, like stuff that was about unsolved cases and crime, like true crime stuff, before the full blown
before podcasts were existed.
What's her name? Nancy, the lady with the hair.
Oh shit. Okay.
Nancy something. Nancy Grace. When Nancy Grace popped the fuck off, and then that became like a whole cottage industry, was ladies like Nancy Grace yelling about stuff and about like how this man clearly killed his wife.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I used to watch all of those. And then like 2 years ago, out of curiosity, I hadn't watched anything like that in like a decade. And I turned one of them on, and I was so shocked. I don't even remember which show it was, but it was one of those kinds of shows that was like on a news network, but like during prime time, unsolved case type show. And they showed actual crime scene photos of like a dead body.
Oh, really?
And that they never used to do that when I was watching
you'd get the reenactments and stuff.
It was only reenactments. You would get certain photos from the file, but never anything really graphic. And like this was like, it showed an actual crime scene photo with a corpse in place.
Yeah.
And I felt like sick to my stomach. And I was like, true crime has truly gone way too far. True crime is so bad now. It's so disrespectful to the dead. It makes me sick. And I used to be like the #1 consumer of it.
Yeah.
When the Nancy Grace boom was happening. And I look back at Nancy Grace now and I'm like, what a vile vulture of a woman preying on people at the hardest time in their lives.
Yeah.
Like, it just is so sick. I'm on this tear right now because honestly, this Amblin thing is a very predatory documentary, I think. But I'm really excited to talk to you about it because like I think you will recognize even more tactics that people take in stuff like this to try to fudge information to make it seem more credible.
Yeah.
But that is like a thing that annoys me so much in documentaries. I do not like documentaries that fudge it. I don't like that. If you're making it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time because I've been on multiple fuck you documentaries. But I agree. This is what I always say. I agree with Werner Herzog that a documentarian is allowed and should be encouraged to influence what he is recording.
Yeah.
Because you're inherently influencing it by recording it. So you'd be kidding yourself if you tried to be quote unquote completely 100% objective.
Right.
But then there's stuff like this that I think is like actively, maliciously predatory to its audience.
Yeah, so the thing, okay. This is a weirdly polished, high production documentary for it to be treating its subject matter as uncuriously as it is. Like, I expect documentaries put out for $5 by a UFO organization to take all of these things at face value and look at these and kind of lean in the direction of belief. And this one, under the guise of like just presenting the stories and kind of asking questions and whatever, looks like presents a lot of these things in a way that leans weirdly into that it's truth. Like,
yeah. So the show is called Encounters.
Yes.
It's a 4-episode series on Netflix. It is each episode is about an hour long, and they're each about a different alien encounter. The first 2 that we watched were like with big groups of witnesses who all saw the same thing.
Yeah, mass sightings.
Basically. I'm assuming that the last 2 are going to be that way too, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We're going to watch the second 2 next week, right?
Sometimes, yeah. It'll probably be next week, but I'm not entirely certain.
And
yet.
I'm most likely going to be on that episode too, because I'm going to finish watching it with you, so we'll see. But like, I bring up the fact that it's 4 episodes because in the second episode was about a group of children at a school in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, the Ariel School UFO encounter, which we talked about on the podcast like 4 years ago. I did an episode on it. It's probably in the hundreds. I'll go back.
You'll put in the notes what episode it is. So there's this group of 62 children that all saw a UFO out on the playground during a break at school. And they never say how many kids were all out there at once. They only keep saying it's 62. Think about how many kids that is. And I'm like, I can almost guarantee you from all the footage they were showing of modern day, that there were like at least 200 kids out there. And 60 of them told this story that they saw a UFO and an alien. Okay. That's not that impressive. The thing that everyone in the documentary loved to keep saying was, it's 60 kids. How could they all lie?
Yeah.
How could they all tell the same lie?
As if that hasn't failed us a lot in the past already.
Lot. But so there's one, what I wanted to say was there's one guy who said, I made it up.
Yeah, his name's Dallin.
I told a kid that there was an alien. He told another kid that it was an alien. And then everybody on the playground went crazy. And it was a lie. I made it up. It was an absolute hoax. And anyone who is still saying that it happened is lying to themselves. And he was out of the 2 episodes that we watched, he was the harshest critic.
Yep.
He was the only one who just kept saying, aliens are not, that didn't happen. And the rest of the tone of the documentary is only talking to people who are 100% self-assured that aliens are real and that they are on like a crusade for truth.
Yeah.
And I feel that the guy, what's his name, Dallin?
Yeah.
He was presented in a way that made him extremely credible and appealing to me as a viewer. But they were clearly trying to present him in a way to make him seem incredible and not incredible, untrustworthy.
Yeah.
They wanted you to think that this guy was like a deadbeat, I think.
Yeah.
They didn't show anybody else in the light that they were shooting him in.
He was filmed entirely differently in a different area from everybody else and presented as a kind of brusque, confrontational, kind of unpleasant person, whereas everyone else was shown emoting and kind of
every time he
contemplative
would say, listen, you're lying and you're lying to yourself if you believe that happened. They would cut to like one of the people saying it happened, like crying and saying
about their
it's the most important thing that ever happened to me or whatever. And I'm like, you're just making this guy seem unnecessarily cruel when he's not being cruel. And my favorite thing about it though is 2 of them were smoking. 2 of the kids who were kids in 1994 when the incident happened. They're adults in this documentary, which came out in 2023. And only 2 of them were smoking cigarettes. This guy, they showed him backlit on a playground at dusk, lighting up and taking a big drag. That is intentional. They left all of that in, a long take of him lighting a cigarette on a playground to make him look like a scumbag.
Yeah.
And then the other chick who is smoking, she's sitting inside of a classroom. She has some kind of lid of a jar turned upside down. And they don't show her light up. She's already halfway through a cigarette and she's tapping it. She's ashing into this lid.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, I'm still breaking the rules all these years later. I hope the headmistress doesn't catch me smoking. That's to make her seem relatable and to make you like her more. And they did that on purpose. And it's bullshit. And man, it pissed me off.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff like that in this documentary.
There's a lot of like weird framing. So the other episode is about the Stephenville, the Dublin, Texas, 2008 mass sighting where 300 people saw these lights. And they do a thing with a Spanish like an English teacher that speaks Spanish in that episode where she is introduced speaking Spanish and like looking over a book in like a dark classroom and
speaking in Spanish about how in our culture we believe in things. And it's to make her seem exotic, and it's to make her, that makes her seem more credible to white people.
Yeah.
White people love shit like that.
And then when it comes back to her, she's like giving a treatise on Don Quixote and talking about how
he was tilting at windmills, but this is real.
Yeah.
And it cut to footage of the first guy who saw the UFOs and came forward standing next to a toppled over windmill.
Yep.
This documentary, this is the thing, okay? It's produced by Amblin. Steven Spielberg is one of the best people at manipulating your emotions and making you feel a certain way.
Yep.
And this was clearly shot in whatever the Amblin house style is. It was using those kinds of Spielberg tricks. I'm not saying that he directed it.
No.
He didn't. But it is someone who is clearly being encouraged to make it Spielberg-esque. There's like a bunch of lens flares and shit.
Yep.
There are certain shots that directly recreate shit from Close Encounters of the Third Kind in the first episode.
Yep.
They want you to be thinking about Spielberg, and they want you to feel the way that a Spielberg movie makes you feel, which makes you believe in people.
Yeah,
I believe in the goodness of people. That's what those movies are.
It's weird how this documentary series is so into like trying to make these people who are saying that the alien stuff is real and happened to them and everything feel like these downtrodden, good old fashioned folk. Like it's so. It is. It's treating everyone who believes in UFOs like they are Spielberg protagonists.
They're all Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah.
They're all Richard Dreyfuss, and we're supposed to like really relate to him.
Yeah.
And let's go through the episodes.
Yeah.
Let's go through the episodes. So you go ahead, introduce the first episode.
Okay, so the first episode is entitled Messengers, and it's about the Dublin, Texas mass sighting in 2008. And it goes through various accounts. The whole premise, the whole kind of...
Stephenville, no?
Is
it both?
They refer to both. I forget which one is.
They kept showing the map of Stephenville.
Yeah, Stephenville is where most of the people that saw these things lived. For some reason, it gets referred to, and they referred to it initially as the Dublin, Texas, and I don't know where those, like, how that functions.
That's
if one's
fine.
like the county or whatever.
Yeah.
But, so the way these episodes work is it's a bunch of talking heads, but they're all like kind of either on location or cutting between a couple locations, and sometimes they're not doing like reenactments, but they're kind of standing in the place that the thing is happening and looking, and there's like something off screen shining on them to like, so they're like witnessing it. Like there's a lot of those tricks.
I think that documentaries should not be allowed to just put effects like that on the screen without acknowledging that it's effects that are being edited on. I think that, like, truly, the media literacy, especially in America, is so piss poor right now that I watch shit like that and I'm like, I know for a fact there are people watching that and they think that that's actual footage of an alien encounter.
Yeah.
They think that it's proof, and it's CGI. Yeah. And I think that's fucked. And it's those people's fault that they would not be more skeptical than that. But I think we have to stop doing this with disinformation about stuff. And I think we have to stop blurring the line between what is true and what isn't. And documentaries like this absolutely do that. I don't mind if all these people believe in aliens, and I don't mind if people watch this documentary and believe the people's stories. I think that's great. I actually do think there probably are aliens. Statistically, there has to be. It would be crazy if we were the only
the kind of
intelligent life,
mathematical certainty that life exists elsewhere in the universe, if it's as large as it seems to be.
But when you edit the lights onto like a spaceship into frame with someone looking up in the sky or whatever in a thing that is a documentary, you're blurring the line too much. Like
you can like if the documentary has a kind of fantastical focus in the way that what was The Cosmos, where the entire documentary is premised around Neil deGrasse. The most recent one was Neil deGrasse Tyson in this like CGI spaceship going through the cosmos, looking at things. And if there is a framing device premise thing of that, then that's a different story, and it's just a different kind of documentary. But this one is presented as people
real stuff.
Yeah, but the spaceship isn't that he's flying around.
No, I know, but I'm saying they are showing footage of actual celestial events, and they're trying to illustrate something to you that could actually happen.
Correct.
And the stuff in this documentary are unproven and unsubstantiated by anything other than eyewitness accounts. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and radar data
and a blurry photograph.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this was,
and if you just show those things and say the people's stories, that's fine. That all is credible. It's fine if you are saying this is this person's eyewitness account, and if you're watching the documentary, take it or leave it. You know what I mean? And even if the documentary clearly believes the person telling the story, that's one thing. When you're editing in all this shit, I'm like, you're making it seem like that's what happened.
They will cut without really making a marked difference, other than the older footage it looks like older footage, between someone just doing an interview with a backdrop behind them to someone like historical footage that they're picking from a news station from like the 90s or whatever, into a like faux reenactment where the same person that was in the backdrop in the shot 2 times ago is now witnessing something, and there's like lights shining on their face and everything, and it's all
they do reenactments with actors.
Yeah. And so you have all of these things just cutting in between each other at the same time without any real regard for, you know how like they used to put like reenactment at the bottom
That's
of footage?
what I mean. It should say that. It should say, this is footage that was created by Amblin Pictures in order to illustrate. It should have to say that at the bottom. All the stuff that I watched when I was younger had to say that.
Yeah.
This is a dramatic reenactment. I don't know when we decided that that wasn't a thing anymore, but it was probably around the same time a lot of stuff was decided in this country.
Oh
my God, it makes me mad.
Truth in advertising got fucked over. Yeah, it's just one of those things that like, well, I think I'm more used to this kind of treatment in documentaries about this stuff than you are, because I watch way more of this bullshit.
And also, this is probably tame compared to a lot of stuff that you watch. I was getting really mad, and I kept looking at you, and you were just looking at me like, yeah, like this is not that bad.
Yeah, it like watching this with you was really interesting because I got to see. Like when one of the talking heads in the first episode, Leroy, is a constable and works as like a officer of the law, and they will just like randomly, when they were introducing him, talk about how he was the first county official to corroborate the lights that were seen by a bunch of people, so that helped them a lot in the efficacy of the story and to make people believe it. And like Jules was just like immediately turned to me and just started ranting about how just because he's a cop doesn't mean he's trustworthy and all this shit.
Oh, he's a constable?
Yeah.
He's a constable. It doesn't like
and he saw his sighting was at his night job.
Yes. He was moonlighting at another job and he saw something. And there are just so many job titles that people say it and will print it in a newspaper article as if that lends the person credibility, where I'm just like, you either got elected to that or it is a job that you have.
Yeah.
Why does that make you more credible than me? Like, my job title, if I was credited in a newspaper article, would say, what, baker?
Mm-hmm.
I work at a bakery. And that doesn't make me any more credible, but I'm an extremely good employee.
Yeah.
I show up 15 to 20 minutes early for every shift. I don't leave until my work is done. I'm extremely trustworthy and like, but if it said baker, you wouldn't think, now she has a good head on her shoulders.
Yeah.
But it says constable. And so the people in this documentary were like, and that makes him credible. And that makes the story real. And then it would cut to the guy talking and he was just some asshole. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but he was just some fucking guy.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was just funny because like you were going through that and I was like, yeah, you may not have heard it, but Kyle and I yell about this like every other week on the podcast about how people want to just assume a police officer will never lie, despite the fact that like that is if you still hold that opinion in your head in the year of our Lord 2024, you seriously need to reconsider your position on a lot of things. It's
always the kinds of roles and titles that people lend credibility to, like that people say lend credibility to a person, are always the kinds of titles that give you a title and a position of power. And those people, when it's just normal people that were appointed to that position, are always more likely to lie.
Yeah.
Because they're being given a position of power and authority for the first time in their life. This is why this is true about cops, constables, but also like whatever it is, like what's another, like a small local town office, anything like that you can locally get elected to. You could be the president of the
controller, like the fucking whatever
school board or whatever.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to interview you for the newspaper, you're going to be inclined to tell that person the thing that they want to hear. But there's also just like other stuff about it that makes you more prone to lying and being dishonest, not less.
Yeah.
Never less.
Yep. So when
did we lose our skepticism as a nation? I feel like more and more we get less skeptical about the stuff we should be skeptical about and more skeptical about actual science and facts.
Yeah.
And it's by design, people.
Yep. Well, see, why are you not running a conspiracy podcast?
I actually was just thinking I sound like a crackpot asshole. Oh my God. Why won't a Netflix documentary come and give me $5,000 for an appearance fee to be in a documentary? I would be a great talking head.
You'd be really charismatic. You'd have a lot of fun.
They should come and film us doing this podcast. It would make great footage. You could take B-roll of all of our DVD shelves with our little aliens on it out there. They would take so much footage of your Kamen Rider toys and they would cut it in between you being like, I started the podcast in 2016.
Yeah.
2016? Did I nail that?
That sounds right. Yeah, 8 years. Yeah. So, so
that little Kamen Rider guy with the big red eyes.
Yeah.
A person who doesn't know what that is, who's filming you to ridicule you for an alien documentary.
Yeah.
They would eat that shit up. Oh
God. Yeah. I would look like a total fucking fool.
We have a big inflatable alien that we got from like a fair, from like a state fair. Anyway.
Fucking Christ. There's so much just random stuff to talk about in these episodes because there are a lot of talking heads that just kind of get thrown at you and they come in and out throughout the entire episode. And the guy that bookends the first episode, his name is Eddie Weiss. He is supposedly an ex-Homeland Security consultant who also is is this
the homeschool guy?
This is the homeschooled eight kids homeschooled by this man.
This guy was driving me insane.
Yeah. Okay. Fuck. Okay. So this guy, to finish the Eddie Weiss thing, they bookend this documentary by showing him and him talking about believing in UFOs and, witnessing Homeland Security jobs where he witnessed the government lying. So he knows that like that is a thing that is possible, which sure. Yeah, of course. But they then cut to him like at his like his kitchen table with all of his children, and he starts talking about Ezekiel and the Bible and like UFOs and relating UFOs to the Bible, and straight up just like launches into, if anyone remembers my like the episode about biblical UFOs where like the Tower of Fire that led the Jews out of Egypt was actually a UFO and all that shit. He launches into like stuff like that wholeheartedly in front of all of his children while talking about what great results they've had with homeschooling and stuff with his 8 children. And you're just left going like, why is this documentary looking like this guy is good? Like,
I think that if you watch this documentary, you should be like legally obligated to watch the episode of John Oliver about homeschooling.
Yeah.
Homeschooling is so bad and it is so completely unregulated,
especially religious homeschooling.
Yes, but it is unregulated and impossible to regulate. It's like one of the hardest things to actually keep track of, and kids that are homeschooled are so fucked, and I'm so against homeschooling. I was homeschooled for a minute. We almost never talk about that, but I came like this close to being like a homeschooled kid, and I'm so glad that I didn't.
Yeah.
My siblings were homeschooled for a few years, and we had like an aunt who had a basement set up, and she was like really big in the church, and we would do mostly Sunday school. That's what happens a lot of the time, is that you do shit like that, like what I would describe as Sunday school, but this guy was just doing it as the curriculum.
All of the homeschooled kids I knew in growing up were religious homeschooling kids. Like it was all just basically, my parents don't want me in the secular schools, and that's not good.
Yeah. And so what ends up happening is like asshole parents who have no training as teachers just end up quote unquote teaching their kids every subject that you learned in school.
Yeah.
Imagine if your asshole fucking dickhead parents had to teach you every single subject that you and I both went to school, and many teachers taught us many different things, and they were supposedly experts in those subjects.
Yeah. And you know how like some of those teachers weren't great?
I know, I was going to say, and I got a shitty fucking education. We still lived in America.
Yeah.
It was bad enough going to public school.
If you get a bad teacher for one class in high school, that's one thing. But if your parents are bad teachers and you're stuck with them for your entire education,
and all they want to talk to you about is how Ezekiel actually saw a spaceship, what the fuck? How are you going to turn out as an adult?
Yeah. So the other thing that is like a theme throughout these documentaries is talking about the gimbal footage. There's a specific UFO footage. There was the naval UFO. I think a lot of people call it of Tic Tac UFOs, the little UFOs. This footage,
it's very cute, by the way,
plays in both episodes, and I am honestly curious if this show was greenlit because of the media frenzy around this footage being released because
What year did that happen?
2017.
I was going to say that was a few years ago now, right?
Yeah.
I remember it being a really big deal. The thing you pointed out, this is what you were saying, was that it's the Tom DeLonge footage.
I believe so,
basically.
yes.
Tom DeLonge?
DeLonge.
It's okay. When that happened, I was still very recently very close with someone who was like obsessed with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a lot about that at the time. And I think you and I had like just started dating.
Yeah. That would have been about the right
or
time.
we were like about to start dating. And but I just so vividly remember that as a time in my life of like everyone on the internet talking about it. That's like around the time of we're all going to Naruto run at Area 51 too, right?
That was a couple years ahead of time,
culturally.
but yeah. Like,
I thought that was 2017.
Was it?
Naruto run?
Why
we're all going to Naruto run.
I guess that might have been around. For some reason, I had that like a year or two later, but I don't know.
I don't know. But
anyway.
It doesn't really matter. Just like culturally, there being this like thing of like, well, aliens are real. The government admitted it.
Yep.
That was how everybody was saying it. The government admitted that aliens are real. And then you read the actual article attached to the footage and it's like, it does not say that at all.
No.
It doesn't say that at all.
All the disclosure stuff is not what anyone wants it to be and not nearly as interesting as people wish it were. But when this footage showed up in the first episode, it made some sense. Like it was like, okay, yeah. There's a mass UFO event. A bunch of people saw it. It was in 2008. This was 2017. Sure, you can putting that footage in the first episode of your UFO documentary makes sense. And then I guess for the second episode, you could make the case because like they have the guy that was the New York Times writer that was like a talking head on that episode that the footage kind of got tied into his article. Sure. But I'm kind of curious if this footage is going to appear in every episode.
I'm excited to find out, honestly.
Because it really feels like this footage is the reason this documentary exists.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll report back on that in episode 2 when we watch the 3rd and 4th episodes.
I can vividly picture the pitch for this documentary series.
Yeah.
There is like, it's from the television arm of Amblin. You know that there are whole offices of people who it's their job to make sure that they come up with content for streaming services for the whatever deals that Amblin has with streaming services.
Yep.
And some poor asshole read that New York Times article and was like, oh, this could be content. This could be content. And I can just so vividly picture the fucking pitch meeting and the pitch deck for this fucking documentary.
Spielberg did a movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. We're going to make a documentary series that's going to kind of spiritually tie to it. Yeah.
Before they interviewed anybody, they probably had storyboards. Yeah. I'm like, I think it's just so transparently a cash grab that it bums me out.
A little bit, yeah. It's weird how, like, okay. You know how in a lot of documentaries you get, like, one piece of, like, setting the stage for someone entering frame. Like, you'll come upon someone the first time they're introduced, and they're like finishing up some little task and they turn to camera and you see their name flash. They had that for like every shot of these people. Like there was so much B-roll filmed for this show. So much stuff had to be directed, staged, and filmed as B-roll. It's like, it's weird. Like the more...
That's another thing that bothers me about it, honestly, because like I'm saying, this same person that I keep picturing who doesn't fucking get it, doesn't get that these people are being produced, they're being encouraged to say certain answers, they're being asked things in a way to juice answers out of them, and they're being set up in tableaus to make them seem more trustworthy to you. You're like being manipulated.
It really feels like reality TV show producers took over documentary shows. Like
it absolutely did. It's a whole fucking industry right now of literally reality TV under the auspice of being a documentary.
Yeah.
And it makes me mad. I used to watch so much reality TV too. And also I worked for a few years as a transcriptionist where like a good deal of the stuff that I would transcribe was just the raw audio of interviews from documentaries where because I feel like this is a thing that a lot of people don't realize because you never hear this part. They cut it out of everything. But most documentaries, even a really credible documentary, the person asking the question has to keep reminding the person answering the question, repeat the question in your answer because they don't want their voice as the interviewer on tape. They just want the interviewee, the subject. And that's like how a majority of documentaries are filmed, even credible ones, is that just the subject is on screen. The documentarian is not visible and is not heard throughout for the most part. But what reality stuff does is it takes it a step further, and they repeat the question in your answer, and then they phrase the question in a way that forces you to answer it in the way that they want you to.
Yeah.
And they fucking milk you for sound bites, and they put words in your mouth, and they edit around you to make it seem like you're saying something that you didn't actually say. And it is so apparent in this that is what is happening, but they make it seem so credible, and it has such a high budget that it looks so polished that you're like, oh, there must be something to what they're saying here.
Yeah. It like, and there's so much like cutting to another, like, so whenever someone says anything that could be deemed slightly controversial or like straining belief, it then will cut to like two separate people doing quick cuts of like, you know, but belief is really like, you get these like weird extra out of context bits that like kind of back up the thing that may have like tripped your trigger a little bit originally, but it doesn't actually mean anything. Like, there's,
and the further away they get from the actual like credible piece of proof, like footage or a photograph or whatever, the longer that it's just people talking, the more they start to splice in stuff that just looks like they're giving you factual information.
Yeah.
The first episode kept repeating and loved to play this animated footage of a map that was labeled Stephenville, and they kept putting little pinpoints with people's names attached to it. Mm-hmm. That makes it look like they're telling you information. It makes it look like you're learning something, but all they're doing is saying this is where these people live.
Yeah, it's this is where the encounters happen, and this is where they live, and this is like,
it's such a dumb trick.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wait, what did I actually just learn from that? That guy lives 2 streets down from the other guy? Fuck you.
Yeah. And like the place that it actually, the map actually came into use in a real way is when the guy, Freedom of Information, like there's a guy that works for MUFON that is interviewed throughout the first episode, and he talks about how a radar technician for the Navy at a MUFON conference was like, well, you're not going to get anything by talking to the government. You have to, by talking to the Navy directly, you've got to submit a Freedom of Information Act request. So he did that for a bunch of different radar towers and got some information, and supposedly the radar blips that he found, and was able to isolate like things that weren't linked to active transponders in the area, to find like flights that aren't registered, to find this and that, and like block out the military signals, that all that stuff, and supposedly found radar that corroborates some of the sightings from that night of like Leroy and Steve Allen is the other main sighting. Supposedly found pings of radar for an unidentified craft in the area that would corroborate what they said. That's where a map could be useful, because you're showing two different things that are locations and showing that they match up on the map. It's not showing you a hard truth, but it is showing you a fact of the case of the information they're presenting. So that, I think, is acceptable. But like you're saying, the map came up so often that it looked like they were trying to...
They wanted every time the map came up for you to think that it corroborated what the person was saying while the map was on screen.
Yep.
It was a trick. And like, I really don't know where to draw the line with stuff like this, because I've talked to you about this before, just the idea that you can interact with things if you know that it's fiction. Mm-hmm. Even if the person is presenting it to you as being something that's real. You don't like I watch a guy on YouTube Shorts who sells Pokemon cards. Mm-hmm. And 90% of the videos that I see are little kids running up to his table and him asking them, what's your favorite Pokemon? And when they say, he gives them free Pokemon cards. I like to watch those videos. They make me feel good. Mm-hmm. The kids seem happy. And I don't think about it any harder than that. But when I do think about it a little bit harder, I'm like, a lot of those are probably staged.
Yeah.
He does that for views. He does that to make money. And even if they're not staged, he's doing it for views and he's doing it to make money, not out of the kindness of his heart, because he's filming it. He set up a camera hoping that he could catch himself being nice on camera.
Yeah.
And it's fine. You know what I mean? So
that's the weird capitalist world we live in right now. It's a weird gray area that I don't always know what to feel about, but I get it.
Yes.
You know?
But so I sit and watch those videos. I don't get pissed off and scroll past them. I sit and watch them and I'm like, oh, this kid likes Pikachu. I bet he has a Pikachu card for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a little bit with documentaries like this, I do wish that I could just watch it like that and just go, like I used to. When I was a teenager, I would watch stuff like that and believe people. And I still do to an extent. I still think about whenever we watch stuff like this, how much I loved the dude from Love and Saucers.
Yeah.
I can get really bought in on certain people in weird fucking documentaries still. But when it's like this, isn't it kind of depressing? I mean, I'm asking you. You're steeped in it 24 hours a fucking day.
Yeah, this one didn't hit like that.
This one isn't as bad as other stuff you watch. But for me, it was bad.
And that's why we're doing this show, because this is the stuff that is being put out there about UFOs now. Yeah. This is what the average person in the world would have access to and be like, oh, I know Steven Spielberg. Sure, he did a UFO
a reputable
thing.
Guy.
I'm gonna watch this. It's on Netflix. Sure. And this is what they're being presented. And I don't think that this is I don't think that this is like totally I don't think this is as dangerous as a lot of other things that I've seen. It's like it still is presenting these things as highly questioned events, even if the people they're interviewing believe them. But it does try very hard to not demonize any believer.
I would say genuinely though, the first episode has almost none of no questioning.
Yeah, there's very little skeptic in this documentary other than Dallin. The first
episode is Dallin is the only guy really, but the first episode is all just people being like, this happened. And the most skeptical person was the lady who was running the newspaper. Do you have her name in your notes?
Yeah, her name
the lady
is
in yellow.
Sarah Vandenberg.
When these sightings happened in Stephenville or Dublin or whatever, the first guy who called it into the newspaper, that's Stephen, right?
Yes, Steve Allen.
Steve Allen. He calls it into the newspaper. Angie, who works at the newspaper, takes it to, who'd you just say?
Sarah Vandenberg.
Sarah, who runs the newspaper.
Yeah, managing editor.
And she basically says, it was a slow news day, so I let her run with it.
No, she specifically said, let's take it and look at it tomorrow. And then the publisher told her to run with it.
But that's what I'm saying. She said it was a slow news day, so I let her keep working on it.
Oh, keep working on it. Yes. Sorry.
I let her go and look into it. And I said, okay, sure, go and look into it. And then she said, and I went home and I didn't think any more about it. And then the next morning I bought the paper. I picked up the paper and the front page said that there was a UFO. And I was apoplectic. I was so pissed off.
Yep.
And she specifically says, I had just moved here from a bigger city. I forget where she says she moved from.
Right.
But she had just moved there. So she was kind of an outsider in a small town trying to prove herself running this paper. And she thought that it was going to completely shoot her credibility that this happened on her watch, even though it was this other editor that approved it. And she said, when I went to that editor and I was screaming at her and I was upset, she said, you're wrong about this. Look how many papers we sold.
Yeah, it sold out every paper in the entire county, they said.
The argument is that it sold a lot of papers. And I yet again am like, oh my God, that is not the point of journalism. Please, why is capitalism hell? That sucks so bad.
Yeah.
But I still was like, okay, but this lady's a skeptic. I like her. I thought, oh good, we have a skeptic. But by the end of the episode, so Angie, the lady who actually did the reporting, we saw footage of her, on Larry King, Charlie Rose.
Yeah,
or somebody else was on Charlie Rose. Maury. She was on all these talk shows.
Oh no, sorry, John Mack was on Maury.
Oprah, maybe?
Yeah.
Oprah was on both episodes though, right? Or was Oprah only the second episode?
So. I don't
We watched
remember.
them both at once, so I'm sorry everyone, it's blurring together.
There were a lot of talk show appearances.
My point is, Angie made the rounds in the media, getting interviewed by people. She clearly really liked the attention that she got from being the person who broke the story. She went out of her way to make appearances and stuff.
Yep.
But then by the end of the episode, you find out that Angie pursued the alien stuff to the point that Sarah had to fire her. And I don't really care what the circumstances of that were in that way. But then subsequently, she has passed on and Sarah is still alive.
Yes.
And I can tell the way that Sarah was talking about it, she was trying to seem softer and more open-minded because I think Angie was well-liked in the town that she lives in. And she was seen as kind of like an uptight bitch from a big city.
Yeah.
And she's trying to maintain her place, her role in a small town. And that happens. And so now she's going, I believe Angie, and if I could talk to her again, I wish that things could have been different.
Didn't she also claim to have her own experience like years later?
Yes, but I'm saying I think that is because
yes.
she lives in Alien Town, USA, where everybody loves to talk about the aliens.
Hey, the two big exports from that town are milk and aliens.
Yep. And like there just was so much talk about that where I was like, yes, of course. It's a fucking tourism draw.
Yeah.
If there are aliens. You know what I mean? And you could tell that she knew that. This lady knew that.
Yeah.
And understood what was happening. And I sort of am like, damn, I really wish that Angie hadn't died because I think we probably would have gotten them both in that episode and they both would have just been being like bitchy talking heads talking about each other.
Yeah.
But instead Angie's dead. So Sarah was like, Angie seemed super cool actually. I like everything she ever did.
Even though like it basically was like, yeah, after I tried to give her other assignments after she did this UFO thing and she just didn't do them and was writing about how I was being like paid by the government to shut her down. And I had to fire her.
Yeah, because that wasn't true. I just wanted her to, I don't know, do her job.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Because
she said the right thing, which is, if there have been no new sightings, we are a news organization. We have to report on news. And there's nothing new to report about that story. So stop reporting about it.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Did you also, how early on after he was introduced, did you realize that Steve Allen was divorced?
About 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the episode, he was like, it broke up my marriage.
Eventually, it broke up my marriage. Yeah. Like,
have you seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yeah.
Okay. Richard Dreyfuss is so shitty to his wife and kids in that movie that it drove me insane, actually. It's a good movie. I like Close Encounters. I think that would actually be a fun commentary episode if we ever wanted to do it for the Patreon. Because it's a good movie. I love Steven Spielberg. I love his films. And I like Richard Dreyfuss. I have problems with Richard Dreyfuss every once in a while, but he's really good in it. But Terry Garr is his wife in that movie.
Yes.
And her, I worship. I would kiss her feet if she would let me. I think she's incredible. And she's in that movie for 2 seconds. And she always is like harried and her hair is all a mess. And she has a kid on her hip. And Richard Dreyfuss is not helping at all.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what this guy seemed like. And when it showed a picture of them together, literally, it looked like you could have shown that picture over the credits of Close Encounters and said it was based on them.
Yeah.
And I just was like, yeah, of course your marriage was broken up by this.
Yeah, because he kept telling stories after the initial encounter where he would be like, yeah, me and these other guys they're all pilots all took our planes out like a week
and my wife didn't like that
and tried to hunt down where this UFO was coming from, and our wives didn't really like. It was just like all of the stuff was like nothing matters but the hunt for this UFO. Mm-hmm. And even if it sacrifices my job, my marriage, my life, like everything.
And I feel bad for those people because there's clearly something else going on there. Like this is how I feel all the time. I'm always like, especially with the kids in the Zimbabwe episode too, I was like, there's something else going on here. And it was especially sad to me in that episode because the main guy who was investigating it that they were talking about with that episode was a Harvard psychologist, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Who like founded the fucking Cambridge psychiatric hospital and was like a fucking pioneer in his field
tenured
and very
professor,
well respected.
fucking,
who
Dr. John Mack is who we're talking about.
He went all in on, I believe people who have seen aliens. It is real experiences that they had. They are not psychotic. And it was like this huge controversy for him in his career that he did that. And I just was like, that one is especially sad to me because like the guy who is supposed to be helping those people also needed help.
Yeah.
And like they might have seen something. I always am willing to be at least a fraction open to the idea that something could have happened. I feel that way about ghosts too. I don't really believe that happens because if it did in 2024, we would have proof. We would have figured out how to do it. I really am like, that's my biggest thing with aliens and with ghosts. How have we not figured out a way to get any physical evidence of either of these things?
So you obviously are not familiar with like the ultra-dimensional hypothesis and everything and how that interacts with our dimension. So I think that honestly you should
This
learn.
is why I don't listen to this podcast.
We get that sweet $5 though.
Honey, I love you. But actually, I don't. Do I donate $5? I think I might be on the $2 tier.
Oh, you were on the
babe.
$2 tier. You're right.
I pay you $2 a month to be on this podcast. I want everyone to know that whenever I'm guesting, I'm not being paid for my time. I pay $2 a month to be on this. Okay. So if you ever at home think, oh, you're getting a little bit too big for your britches, and you think you could step up and do what I do, start paying those $2. How about that? Get on patreon.com/itgetsweird. Is that right?
Yeah.
And pay the $2.
Hey, maybe even $5.
Since the Patreon started, I legitimately have paid $2 every single month.
Yeah, you've been
Shoot.
You have been
That's a shoot.
there the entire time.
Why do I do that? I guess because I'm fucking stupid. We live together, but whatever.
Yeah. We just really like those Patreon fees.
Yeah, and I love to get the little notification that says like Jules was on It Gets Weird this week on the Patreon. I'm like, I was on that podcast.
So I like I mentioned earlier, I did an episode on the Ariel School UFO encounter and all that stuff forever ago. One thing that I don't think I covered in that episode, that I don't know of how much of this information was out there ahead of time, was supposedly the headmaster or headmistress of the Ariel School had an entirely separate UFO encounter between the kids and when Dr. John Mack came and talked to all the kids, and I guess never told anybody until now. Like it is just presented like everything else in this documentary, that this just happened and she did whatever, and no one really questions it or talks about it, brings it up again at all. Where she got abducted and like a microchip was placed in her belly button. You know, your very traditional abduction story. But she like kind of breaks down about it, but then also like kind of tries to be like, oh, and that's just a thing that I deal with by myself and it doesn't impact anybody else, and you can just forget about it. Like very much like tries to bring it up and then dismiss it herself immediately.
And she said that they visited her 3 times and that the third time they offered to take her with them, and that she told them no, even though she was so depressed in her life that it was to the point of almost being suicidal. She did not go with these aliens.
Yeah.
That's the thing where I'm like, if you're that depressed, you would go with the aliens. I'm sorry, but come on. You'd go.
Yeah, like it's just I don't think I got that story in the original episode. I don't know if that story is out there somewhere and I just missed it, whatever. But it was hearing her recount it in this episode the way that it was. Like the tone of this documentary is wild for how like rosy-eyed it looks at everything and presents these things and just like moves on with no one talking or questioning about it other than fucking Dallin in the second episode at all.
I know that you and I are both familiar with, I guess I would just call it like the Spielberg shot of a person. If I say that to you, you can picture what I'm talking about. Someone who is being lit in a majestic manner. The camera is probably slightly below them and tilted up to make them look more impressive. Or it's moving in some way. There's usually a lens flare, like either like right behind their head or somewhere upper in the frame. And it's this shot that immediately makes someone seem like you can picture Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
He's lit that way. You can picture Tom Hanks in Bridge of Spies. He's fucking lit that way.
Yeah.
There are like a ton of famous shots in Spielberg movies. Dreyfuss gets it all the time in Close Encounters.
Yeah.
And the normal people in these documentary episodes are getting this treatment. And it just immediately makes you feel, I want to believe these people.
Yeah.
I want them to be telling the truth. And I just think that's such a dangerous way to present a documentary. It's so fucked up. There should be more space for me to decide how I feel about the person.
It feels like it's shot like a promotional video for a charity that's supposed to be warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
But it's about UFO encounters.
Yeah.
And so there's just this like kind of dissonance to everything.
And I don't want documentaries to do that, where that exploitative thing where they're clearly editing it to ridicule the people either.
Yeah.
I think that's really unfair too. I don't like watching documentaries where they like put fart noises and like sproyoyoing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where they just make the people look like clowns. I think that's sad too, because there's a reason that these people are telling this story. There's a reason that they believe this. I think that a majority of the people in documentaries like this believe what they're saying. I don't think that, well, maybe not a majority, but like
it's
a good portion of the people genuinely believe it, and they are pursuing it because it is something that they actually believe.
Yeah.
The one guy from the second episode who said it helped him get in touch with his own spirituality and stuff, that guy believes that happened to him.
Yeah.
I know he believes that. One of the other women who was talking, I know that she believes it. Some of the other ones, I think, were stretching it a little bit.
Yeah.
But a couple of them, it was like, they truly believe that this happened to them. The headmistress, I believe that she thinks that happened to her.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that means it happened, but they believe it.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that people like that deserve to be ridiculed for believing that. I don't think that it is a belief that is inherently deserving of ridicule. But I certainly don't think that they should be shot like this as if they're fucking George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I listed fucking Spielberg movies earlier and I didn't even say Lincoln. Lincoln is a huge one for that.
Yeah.
There's so much footage of him, of DDL, wrapped in a blanket, being lit in this really romantic way, saying something about America.
Yeah.
And you're like, God damn it, slavery's wrong. Lincoln's a good fucking movie.
But in this documentary, it's, God damn it, aliens might be real.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's okay. At this point, I think we've covered most of the big beats of what these two episodes were and kind of the format and all this kind of stuff. I wanted just to ask you on a baseline, did you enjoy these two episodes of television?
It made me want to watch the second two.
Agreed.
It was very watchable.
Yes.
Really, really watchable. And I used to binge shit like this. And when I was in that area in my life, I definitely would have eaten it up and I would have loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people in my life then that I would have talked about it with and been like, I believe this person, I don't believe this person. And it was really good for that. If you like watching stuff like this, I think that this is like an upper tier version of it. If you watch stuff like this all the time, it's really well produced. It looks gorgeous. It's shot like a Spielberg movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking the right questions. It is edited in an extremely competent way. They got a lot of good people. The people are interesting characters. Like the constable from the first episode could be in a movie. You know what I mean? Like it is really, really watchable.
Yes, I would agree. It's like for if I'm looking at kind of the history of Fuck Your Documentary, there are the highlights, you know, The Man Who Stares at UFOs, the Love and Saucers, like the ones that are very interesting people. There's kind of a lens that is being looked at through. They're telling this interesting story. This doesn't rise to that, but it is a lot better. It is presented a lot of the same way as some of the lesser documentaries I've seen, but with like an actual budget and production. So this is above a lot of the stuff that I've watched for this sub podcast, you know? But but like you said, I agree. 100% very watchable, easy to put down. And if you already are luckily have the right viewpoint about these kinds of things of skepticism and everything, you can kind of ride the journey in a way that is fun, you know?
Here's something that I want to ask you.
Okay.
Why are people so willing to write off the fact that some of these ships could have been human made? Because I'm not saying that it didn't happen. And I'm not saying that it was made as like a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, why does every single person who talks about this say, there's no way that humans could have done this? I know that human technology is not advanced enough in order to achieve the things that this ship did. But they're willing to believe that the government covered up that aliens came. But it completely fucking boggles the mind to picture that the government might have hidden advancements in technology that allowed them to be able to do it with a man-made ship. Why? Why is that? Is there like a rationale that you hear from those kinds of people? Is there like a theory about that? Or is it truly just they just want to believe in aliens?
It's basically, there's kind of a line of demarcation. Look, Kyle is actually a better historian of this shit than me, but I will do my best here.
And we would never say that to his face.
But from my understanding, basically, because you have kind of the big specific, like the big events in the 1940s of Roswell and a couple other things with like the Kenneth Arnold footage and stuff like that, where there were these big UFO encounters where there was either a crash or whatever. And there's this, so the conspiracy of aliens visiting Earth kind of started with a subheading of government reclamation of downed UFO technology. So then, in reality, God, okay, so there's like a couple points here. There's that where like the UFO stuff in the 40s and everything. And so people then have just taken it as any massive advancements that the government might have would have been given to them by aliens and would have been or recovered from downed alien craft. So it's not of man-made origin, even if it is a government ship. But there's also this like kind of propaganda angle of how Germany had more advanced shit in World War II than we did, and no one liked that. And so the American government got kind of, I think they denied the existence of a lot of like experimental aircraft from other countries under the guise of not of American superiority.
Yeah, those fucking Germans never could have done that.
Yeah, and
they can't have anything more advanced than what our boys made.
Yeah, like there's like theories on some of those early downed UFOs and stuff that they were actually like basically fake craft made by Russia or Germany or whatever, and to like basically try to freak out the American public.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple facets to that, and
because the mentality of, well, there's no way humans could have made this, it must be aliens. I just think all the time about stuff like Ancient Aliens and stuff like saying that the Egyptians couldn't have built the pyramids, where I'm like, well, we know now that that's just pure racism. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
The Egyptians absolutely did build those fucking pyramids. So I'm kind of like, you don't think there's any chance, especially the American government. I won't speak for other countries, but my government loves to lie to me. It's their favorite fucking pastime.
Yeah.
And you don't think there's any chance that they had a secret program where they made a ship and then they flew it over Stephenville, Texas?
That's why they're always so scared of Tim Roth, because he can tell when they're lying to him.
When you tilt your head to the
it's a
left,
micro expression.
He knows, and he's got your ass.
Yeah.
You look up and to the left, you're inventing. You're inventing information. I learned all the tricks. I watched every episode of Lie to Me.
Yeah.
Believe me. I was just a simple girl who wanted to fuck Tim Roth. And I watched every episode of that show.
It's really sad. Like, actually, that show's not that bad.
Sad
it's
that
pretty
I watched
fun.
that whole show?
No, I've watched that whole show too. Because here's the thing. I binged a lot of bullshit on Netflix in college while I was doing research.
We all know that you watched Ballers, Niall. We all know
I didn't
that you
finish
love
Ballers.
Entourage.
I don't love Entourage. I watched Entourage.
You did watch it though, and you did watch Smallville like 5 times in one summer.
I watched Smallville once.
What's the one you watched 5 times? Entourage.
Entourage I've watched in its entirety twice.
You said that there was a show. You told me that the summer that you were living by yourself, that there was a show you watched multiple times in one summer.
I think you might be misremembering the story slightly.
Well, I don't care. You watched Entourage twice in one summer.
Yeah, there you go. We'll go with that.
Listen, I just watched a whole documentary where if you say it, it's true.
Yeah. Let's frame you like a Steven Spielberg movie. We'll get you in frame.
You want me to bust out an old classic from my past? Truthiness. You remember that old chestnut? You weren't as into this shit as I was. That's an old Colbert-ism from the Colbert Report.
Oh, okay.
Truthiness is, in the Bush era, he coined it as, if you believe it, that makes it true. And that's what truth is. And so something doesn't have to actually be true in order to have truthiness. And that was like a very big thing.
Okay.
And we really thought that Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert were going to fix it all for us, man.
Yeah.
I went to the
How's that working out?
I went to the rally for sanity or whatever the fuck. What did they call that? I went to that.
I
was
don't
there.
even remember. I don't know. I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert hosted a rally/march on Washington. Yes,
Okay.
and I went, and I
All
was
right.
there. Google it, everybody. And then picture me being a middle schooler, madly in love with Stephen Colbert. I knew everything about him. I did multiple presentations on him for school because I just knew off the top of my head where he was
No
born.
research required.
Yeah, like I didn't have to do any work, and I went to that fucking thing. Anyway,
All right.
we thought that Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert were gonna fucking fix everything, and what did they do? They both quit their shows and then came back with slightly worse versions of them a couple years later. And then Jon Stewart replatformed Bill O'Reilly for some fucking reason.
Yeah. That's about it.
Would it be an episode of this podcast with me on it if I didn't bring up a late night host?
Yeah, I was
at
gonna
some point?
say we've hit the quota of referencing some late night TV host. I no Conan reference on this episode. A lot of times it ends up being Conan.
That's
I know. I
true.
just did it, but
But we did talk about Conan right before we started recording. It's
That's true.
unfortunate that wasn't on the tape because we absolutely did talk about Conan.
yeah. Anyway, I think honestly, okay. So
We talked about Conan on the bonus episode.
we did
Subscribe to the Patreon, baby. I love to talk about Conan.
where we definitely watched an episode of the X-Files.
It was a real X-Files episode
Yeah.
because that's all I do. I've never not watched an episode of the X-Files.
So I think let's wrap this up. The premise of this was basically, as someone who doesn't live in this shit, did you want to watch more of this? And it's already been established we're going to finish this miniseries.
Definitely.
So stick around for part 2 here probably in a week. I guess we'll take care of some business. Oh God, now we come to the part where I have to do all of the business by myself without Kyle. When I just have, I have my part memorized.
Which part do you do? Does he do the Patreon stuff?
Yeah,
I can do the Patreon stuff.
You want to do the Patreon?
I can do it.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident I could do it.
All right. So if you want to find us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast. We're on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast. We're also on all your favorite podcatchers. Look it up on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, whatever ones still exist. We lost one of those recently, and I always forget which one it is. So look up It Gets Weird wherever you look up podcasts, and we're probably there.
We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/itgetsweird. And you can subscribe at multiple tiers with multiple options, whatever you're comfortable with giving. There's a $1 tier where you can just give us a shout out, give us a tip. We really appreciate that. But then, and there's no extra content. It's just to say that you like the podcast. Then at a $2 tier, you get a new episode every other week. Where right now we're watching The X-Files.
Season 2.
And we watched a real episode of The X-Files this week. I was covering for Kyle on the Patreon. And then above that is the $5 tier where you get an extra bonus episode every week. So on the off weeks where you don't get an X-Files episode, you'll get a show either from Niall or Kyle, sometimes with a guest. And those episodes are really great too. You should check it out. Kyle does a really cool show called Internet Experience Deluxe. And Niall does a show where he reads a book or some shit. That shit rules, and it's only $5, and you get the X-Files and the other bonus episode. And then, do you have a tier above that?
You get new episodes of the main feed 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday, and you get access to our Patreon Discord.
Yes, and the Patreon Discord is fucking sick. Me and Garrett hang out in there, so if you ever want to shout out either one of us, that is a great way to do it. But also Niall and Kyle are always hanging out and chatting, and there's a bunch of different channels to talk about a bunch of different stuff. I love the Discord. I love the people in the Discord. I'm mainly only active in the wrestling channel because as we've established, I'm the know-nothing asshole who doesn't know about this shit. So, but I love everybody who subscribes to the Patreon. It's a really cool vibe in there. So I think it's worth it to subscribe just to get access to the Patreon, which you get at the $2 level.
Correct.
So basically, give these assholes money. This is a good podcast, and that's my pitch.
Thank you very much. And also, Kyle's on Twitch. Sometimes he's been playing a lot of Elden Ring DLC when he's been available, but schedule has been weird lately, so I'll let him cover.
A white guy in his 30s who likes Elden Ring? This is unbelievable
fucking roasting
content
his
from
ass.
you guys.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Picture a world where a guy who likes tabletop gaming enjoys playing Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
And also streams it on Twitch.
Yep.
Unique content here at It Gets Weird, folks. Thank you all for continuing to support the show. We love you all. We have a great time doing this, and we would love to keep doing that. So support the show. This has been It Gets Weird. I've been Niall.
And I've been Jules. Peace.